Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Pete Carroll Was Right, the confusingly named Alabama football live video show. As always, it's Carter, Ben, and Mitch here to talk all things Alabama football with you. It's Iron Bowl week, and it's going to be a big one. So we've finally got a legit matchup to break down for perhaps the first time since Florida State. So a lot of talk about Auburn this week. Obviously, we're coming off a paycheck game against Mercer, which went about as well as could be hoped. Honestly, they didn't. It wasn't one of those games like, say, Chattanooga last year that was just sort of where we have to come in and be like, calm down, calm down. It's just a paycheck game. You know, they played very clean. Lynn Moses looked great, which obviously it's just Mercer, but that's an encouraging sign. J.C. Hassenauer and Parash Pierce-Baker looked good, was the SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week. But, not a whole lot to talk about from this game. But
nobody got hurt.
Nobody got hurt.
Most important thing.
Yeah. Let's I just want to touch on Dylan Moses here. So there's a couple things. The first thing is that he played, I think he played. I don't think Keith Holcomb got a single snap in the first half.
Not that I recall.
So the first point is that Moses is the guy.
Yep.
That's pretty clear. You don't need us to tell you that, but like everybody can see that Moses is the guy. So there's no more mystery here. This isn't going to be a mix and match situation. I think Moses would have to go out and play like very poorly the first 3 or 4 series, maybe even to get pulled. They're not going to it's not going to be a situation, I don't think, where he goes out against Auburn, doesn't play well in the first series, and then gets yanked for Holcomb. He seems like he's the guy. Now, that's a good thing, right? Because like he's the more talented player, and you want the most talent and the most speed on the field. Obviously, he looked really good on Saturday. Obviously, like you said, it was against Mercer, and Mercer was not very good. Their offensive linemen in particular seemed like they were really small. I wanted to, and I never ended up checking the weights on some of those guys, but they looked like they were not linemen. They looked like they were a smaller position.
So it's like when you go back and look at a roster from like a 1965 college team, and it's like Joe Smith, offensive guard, 245 pounds.
I mean, it's really like there was one play where I saw like Moses really like he laid like a pretty good hit on a lineman who was trying to come out to block him, and I was getting excited, and I was like, well, actually, wait a second, this guy's probably like 230, so they're probably pretty close in weight. But I think that there were some things that were good, not just in terms of the results of the game, but in terms of things that you want to look for in his performance that may be repeatable against an actual opponent, such like against Auburn, right? He seemed to play his run fits very well. He seemed to find the ball well, and he's obviously very fast. I mean, he's obviously very fast, and he played fast. Like he's really quick edge to edge.
Right.
But just generally knowing his assignments, I think, was important. They seemed to get all the calls in and get people lined up. And I know that during the broadcast, Cole Kublik made a good point that apparently Jeremy Pruitt had told him that playing on the road might actually help them because it's going to be easier to get the calls in when the crowd is not.
It's going to be quiet when you're out there on defense on the road.
So what do you guys take away from Moses' performance beyond just he played well, but in terms of what did he do in this performance that tells you something about what he might do against Auburn?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to extrapolate because, he's with Auburn's superior talent. He's not going to be kind of running free as much as he was.
Right.
And Auburn's going to do some things in terms of formations and motion and even going as far as trick plays and stuff like that are really going to kind of test your mental ability as a freshman linebacker. But biggest takeaway is that just like he generally looked like he knew what he was doing out there. And for a player, as young as he is, but on the flip side with as much raw talent as he has, that's the biggest thing you want to see. I think like not every single Auburn play is going to be a reverse zone read, with all kind of motion and all. Like sometimes you just, it's just the fundamentals of playing linebacker, and he looked like he really had that stuff down.
Yeah, and he looked very healthy. Now, I don't think that we had any reason to believe that he was hurt, but just the fact that he looked healthy is makes him in a different place than all of his teammates. So, like, I'm going to take that as encouraging. Also, just the fact that, like, at least we know we're going to be sending out a guy who seems, pretty healthy and fresh and able on
He
Saturday.
looked like the fastest guy on the field.
He did. He really did. Like, and those plays where Mercer's trying to run these perimeter plays, run screen, stuff like that. I know that those plays aren't developing as quickly as they might for Auburn. But closing speed is closing speed, and he had some good closing speed, right? Like he was really aggressive and he really seemed like he attacked the football. He didn't play with a lot of hesitation. He just looked good.
Yeah. I mean, I think 4 tackles for loss is good no matter how you slice it.
Exactly. Yeah. It was a notable performance. I would say that it's as good as you could have asked for, right?
Yep.
Like there's nothing that could have happened on Saturday that would have made me feel any more comfortable than what actually happened.
Right. There's only so far you can go in terms of what this game was going to tell you just because it's Mercer.
Exactly. Right.
And also more generally because it's just one, like with a player that young, that inexperienced, like you can have a lot of fluctuation from game to game performance. So both because of the opponent and because it's just one game, there's only so much you can take from it. But like you said, I think this is about as positive a positive sign as you could have hoped for.
Yeah. Yeah. Mitch, what did you have any takeaways from the Mercer game?
Yeah, I mean, I liked how decisive and you talked about how he played fast. Like that's kind of what I wanted to see that we weren't getting from Holcomb. I feel like along with the kind of athletic talent.
Yeah, Holcomb seemed like he was thinking a lot out there, right?
Yeah.
Like he was like the processing time was not really happening as quickly as it needs to happen, and then before he realized what was going on, he was out of the play.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you almost want him to just be decisive and do the wrong thing sometimes, like because if you're indecisive, you're going to get washed out of the play. So
right, exactly. Yeah, being decisive and maybe too decisive at times is going to backfire as well. But if you're just sitting there and thinking and not playing aggressively, like it's going to backfire every play. Like that strategy is never going to work.
Exactly.
At least when you gamble, you're going to be right sometimes.
Right. I guess the only other thing, Carter, you had mentioned about the left guard situation. I don't know if you wanted to touch on that really quick. People seem to be saying that maybe JC should just play anyway, no matter whether Peters Baker's healthy. There seems to be this implication amongst some people that JC is the better player, all things being equal. I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, we've been as hard on this show on Ross as anyone as anybody is. Like it's just obvious that he's the least physically talented player on the line. But at the same time, he's a 3-year starter, and this is not even a case of like seniority being favored because he's a redshirt junior and Hassenauer is either a true or redshirt senior. So you like if Hassenauer were the better player, he'd be playing.
Right.
But and I said this on Twitter, I will say that like generally linemen can come back quicker from high ankle sprains than most positions can. Think back to Cam Robinson in
2014.
Was it 2014? Yeah.
14, after the Tennessee game.
High ankle sprain against Tennessee, had the bye week, then came back.
Apparently had surgery too, like after the game, which is crazy.
Yeah, right.
And played well against LSU, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So, like, that's kind of crazy. Yeah. Cam gets a bad rap here. It's pretty undeserved.
But at the same time, there's no way you can be 100% 2 weeks after a high ankle sprain. I don't care who you are. And it's one thing if it's a player like Cam in 2014 or, say, Jonah this year, where they're just, you got to have that guy out there, whether whether he's 100% or not, because there's just, it's such a drop off to the next guy. Well, I think JC has shown, both when filling in against Mississippi State and in earning SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week honors this week against Mercer. He's a solid backup. Like, there isn't too much of a drop off from Ross to him. And so I think if Ross is not 100%, which it would be shocking if he were, then you take the guy whose best is equivalent to, say, Ross at 90% rather than Ross himself at 80%.
Yeah, I tend to agree. This is one of those situations where I trust that whoever the coaching staff sends out there on, not to say that the coaching staff's word is the end all be all, but I trust that whichever player starts at left guard on Saturday is the player that gives them the best chance to win the game.
Right. I don't think we have enough information generally, both in terms of how healthy Ross is and in terms of a playing sample size for JC.
We know so little about JC.
Yeah. It's just one of those situations where you kind of have to trust the judgment that they make, because we don't know enough externally to really make a proper judgment as to whether or not that call is right or not.
Right, I agree. Okay, well, that's kind of it for Mercer. They played really well offensively. They played well defensively. They scored a lot of points. They didn't give up many points, and that's kind of the size of it.
Yep.
And nobody got hurt, like Mitch said.
Nobody got hurt.
Nobody got hurt. So that's and the game ended quickly. I love when they do that. I love they're good at getting these games over with as quickly as possible. It's always a good thing because, again, for the no injury thing, less than a 3-hour college football game is a fast game. Okay. Auburn?
So Auburn. Yeah. It's going to be tough. Auburn's defense is really, really, really good. Their defensive line in particular is really awesome. As anyone who watched the Georgia game will know. They are pretty solid on offense. This is not – I don't think they terrify you in the ways that some teams will on offense. I don't think this is Gus's best offense at Auburn. No. But they do a lot of things well, and they have a solid quarterback, which is more than you can say for the past 2 seasons. And they have probably the best back in the SEC in Kerryon Johnson. So they're tough, especially, you consider the injuries, all the ways in which Gus's offense stresses linebackers in particular, and Alabama having to deal with that. And then you worry about they're dangerous when they can stay ahead of the chains on offense. And now, at more than at any time in recent history under Nick Saban, you worry about Alabama's ability to sort of control the line of scrimmage on standing downs. So a lot of people are very, very nervous about this game.
What's the line?
4.5 right now.
That sounds right. That sounds like a good line. So, yeah. Okay. Which side of the ball should we start on? It does not matter to me. The more.
I honestly think it's sort of equally interesting on both sides. So I'm not sure there's one that I would really think we need to prioritize.
Right. So let's work with how about we work with the Alabama defense against the Auburn offense.
Okay.
The first thing I have to say about the Auburn offense, and Carter mentioned that he thinks that Kerryon Johnson is the best back in the SEC. For starters, I agree. Second, he's freaking awesome. Like, he is really, 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 really good. Gary Danielson during the Georgia game and also during the LSU game dropped a Le'Veon Bell comparison. I think that is actually fair. He is so patient the way he runs, and he picks his holes so well. Like the combination of the pace with which he plays the position and the vision that he has and the way he allows his blocks to develop and the way he can sort of find holes, not just the play side holes, but the holes, all over, backside, play side, whatever. He is just really, 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 really dangerous. Is he the best back that Gus has had?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, Gus, Trey Mason was a Heisman finalist and had an amazing year, but he was really good.
Trey Mason was awesome, but I think Carry On's better.
See, I agree. I thought that Trey was good, but he was boosted up a little bit by that offense. Like that offense, their ability to run the football with him and Marshall.
Well, yeah, just that
and that offensive line was just like they were so good, and maybe his numbers were a little bit inflated above his actual like talent level, but Carry On is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I guess. Well, so
yeah, it's not like it was like I don't even remember what's happened. Obviously, Trey Mason is not making a big name for himself in the NFL, which is not the end all be all. But
he had issues.
I would be shocked if Carry On is not a very good NFL back.
So would I
in the next couple of years.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I think he's just like the prototypical NFL back. He's got his size is really good. His vision's great. Like I don't know. He's a workhorse, right? I mean, he's carrying the ball like over 30 times a game the last however many weeks or something. Like he's just really good. So generally, do we have any other general thoughts about the Auburn offense before we sort of break down the matchup more? They don't have the quarterback run game to go with their offense. That's been something that they kind of lacked the last, since Nick Marshall, I guess, right? Yep. Last year they had some, like, I don't know, who was the guy? Franklin, right? That was the guy who kind of subbed in sometimes for Sean White, who's
now a wide receiver for the Lane Train down in Boca.
So not much of a quarterback if Lane is moving him to wide receiver. I didn't even know that he was there. I didn't know that either. So they quarterback. They don't have the quarterback run game in the offense that hamstrings them to some extent. I think we all agree that Gus's offenses are best when he has the threat of the quarterback run. But Stidham's a good thrower, though, so he gives you that. The offensive line is really good. The wide receivers are decent.
Nothing special.
Big play guys, right? Slayton's like a really you sent us the stats, Carter.
Yeah, Slayton's definitely their like pure downfield guy. He's been targeted 50 times this year, but only has 19 receptions at 28 yards a pop.
Yeah, so they're just taking shots.
He's the go guy.
Yep. Shots. And then there's the Ryan Davis, right? Is that the name of the number one guy, or am I getting that wrong?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then they have Stove and
Hastings.
Their Hunter Renfrow knockoff.
I was just thinking that. I was just thinking the exact same name popped into my head. I wasn't going to say it because, But yes, very much.
Great value, Hunter Renfrow.
Yeah.
Kirkland's signature, Hunter Renfrow.
Hopefully he does not break our hearts in the same way that Hunter Renfrow did. So they're good. Now, the general offensive strategy here is to run the ball a lot, right? And run the ball extremely well. And then to hit plays off the threat of the run. The plays that they'll hit off the threat of the run will be the sort of the common constraints, which sometimes they'll get reverses involved with their wide receivers. They will throw little screens when they think you're run blitzing, especially corners, and then they'll try to hit you deep on play action. And that's like kind of the general scope of the offense, right?
Yeah, they really don't have any kind of advanced or intermediate passing game. Kind of the whole thing is really set up as a complement to the run game.
Right. Do we have the advanced stats profile maybe to just sort of give a quick rundown of what they do well on offense and what they don't do as well?
They do most things pretty well.
Yeah.
Auburn, yeah. So, actually only 23rd in rushing S&P plus, although Alabama's like 29th, I think.
Yeah.
Good success rate, 48.9%, which is good for 13th in the country. Not that explosive in the run game, just 70th.
Which makes sense, right? Because you don't have the threat of the quarterback run.
Yep.
So it's limiting your that which limits your running lanes. And Carry-On is not the fastest running back I've ever seen.
No,
so he's not usually going to hit you home runs.
With him being keyed on in the run game, he gets his yards just because he's that talented, but he's not the type who's going to break. He doesn't have like really elite top end speed,
right?
And he's not the kind of guy who's going to break off a 70-yard run through a loaded box.
Right, right.
So that's
now their biggest weakness, if I remember correctly, and this sort of fits with what we know about them, is that they're not great on passing downs. I think.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting because they do it in very different ways. Like if you watch these two offenses, there's not a lot of cosmetic similarity, but ultimately the same like general idea applies to both, in that they really need to stay ahead of schedule, and they're really predicated on being successful on standard downs and staying ahead of schedule. And if you get either of these offenses into passing downs, then you're in good shape.
Now, we'll get to the other side of the ball later, but just to sort of build on that comparison.
So Auburn passing down success rate 88th.
Okay.
28%.
So that means passing downs. Okay. It's 20. Okay. So, but see, Alabama is better on passing downs, right? Like they're not like a great passing down team.
Not great, but better than that.
Because they have Calvin Ridley and they have a quarterback that can run. And that's going to bail them out of some situations in a way that and Auburn doesn't have any of those things.
Yeah, they're 36th passing downs.
Yeah.
Alabama's.
Well, the passing downs S&P plus 36. The success rate just 69th.
Yeah.
But that's like Auburn passing downs S&P plus 59th. Passing down success rate 88th. Passing down explosiveness 21st. Whereas Alabama, passing downs S&P plus 36th, passing down success rate 69th, and then explosiveness 5th.
Okay. So explosiveness 5th. Okay. So for Auburn,
so when Alabama is hitting plays on passing downs, they're big plays.
Right. Right. And with Auburn, it's kind of the same thing, right? Just to a lesser extent, which makes sense because their passing game is so predicated on deep shots.
Yep.
Okay, so that's kind of like, let's kind of work backwards here, because I think we've sort of established the fact that we like Alabama's chances defensively on passing downs, right?
Yeah.
Auburn's had games where they have not protected the quarterback well at all. Clemson, I think, had 11 sacks against them. Georgia, there's a lot made of that performance, and people are obviously being very critical of it. But the Georgia defense, if I remember correctly, and I was just kind of flipping through the game really quickly before here after watching it live, they were good on third downs.
It was really kind of a tale of two halves for Georgia's defense. Like, they really did a good job in the first half. Like I think they gave up one touchdown, and then they kept holding Auburn to field goals. And then in the second half, the dam just kind of broke.
But they just did some terrible things to keep drives alive. Like they hit the quarterback late, or they did or they had a leaping penalty on a punt, or they fumbled the punt. Like it was just like mistake after mistake. But when they actually got Auburn on a passing down on like a 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, longer than that, they had no issue at all, because the Auburn offense is just not built for those situations. They don't have the intermediate passing concepts to consistently hit on those plays, and they don't have the players to consistently hit on those plays. And Stidham was under pressure constantly when they were in those situations.
Yeah. So Stidham's first 15 passing attempts, or I guess I should say dropbacks, basically. First 15 pass attempts produced 8 completions for 60 yards and a sack.
Yeah. So he's like, I think that when Alabama gets to third downs, they're not going to have much of a problem. I assume we're gonna see a lot of manufactured pressure on third downs. That's been Alabama's go-to all year.
Yeah.
If Christian Miller plays, and that seems kind of up in the air, Saban. How did you guys read into what Saban said today specifically about? I mean, I guess he talked about the injured guys as a whole, and maybe didn't touch on.
Yeah, he didn't really differentiate between their situations. He just said they're not medically cleared yet, but I'm not ruling them out.
But it seems like Christian Miller has the best chance to play, right? Like
yeah, that was the report that came out last week was that
Yeah.
Miller could be ready for the Iron Bowl.
So if he plays, we're talking like a pitch count and probably like third downs, right?
Yeah, we're talking about third and longs, basically.
Which just means that just even gives Alabama, hopefully a better chance to dominate on third downs.
Right.
The way I see third downs is in this game. Alabama, it should be a given that Alabama wins those downs. They're a good pass rushing team. They have good coverage players. Auburn is not good in these situations. Alabama is good in these situations. Alabama has to win those downs. Has to be a given. What really needs to happen is that Alabama needs to make a big play or two on those downs.
There needs to be, they harass Stidham into a bad throw, get an interception. Yeah. They need a strip sack. They need, or even just like a sack or something that, puts them, 3rd and 25 or 4th and 25 and you get good field position off the punt or something like that.
He will do that sometimes. I mean, both Georgia and LSU, when he was getting pressured, he'd just throw some balls up to Slayton and just be like, hey, make him play. So,
yeah,
I think those will be there.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I guess just setting the goal, getting off the field, okay. I'm never going to be upset if they have a 3rd and 7 and they get off the field and it's forced as a punt in any one moment. But if we sort of look at the game going in and we look at all of the 3rd and longs that Auburn is going to have in that game, it's not enough. The goal is not just to get off the field.
Right.
The goal is to hit a big play. Alabama's gone into plenty of games here where, like, if they get to a 3rd and long, like, okay, last year against Clemson, the goal when they got to 3rd and long was just to get the hell off the field. Yeah. And get the hell off the field because they did their job, not because of Clemson players standing in the end zone. So, like, that was a huge win for Alabama if they just got off the field on 3rd and long. This, against Auburn, it's expected.
Yeah.
It has to happen.
Right.
They also need to make a big play. So that's kind of how I see that situation. If Alabama gets beat on 3rd and long, how is it going to happen?
Bust.
Yeah, a bust, or Stidham throws up a prayer, and what happens is what always seems to happen to Alabama is, there's 3 defenders around one guy, and miraculously the ball just appears in the receiver's hands.
Yeah.
Or, I could see, maybe Auburn plays it safe for the draw and carry on so hard to tackle. And this is certainly not the best tackling Alabama defense of recent years. And maybe especially on the shorter 3rd, if it's like a 3rd and 7 or something, he breaks a tackle or 2. I could see that happening. But there's just like we were saying, they just don't have this like advanced passing off. It isn't even on the level that Alabama has, where at this point you trust Jalen to throw the ball in the intermediate field to Calvin Ridley.
Right, and Stidham also doesn't have the ability when things break down to just take off and run, which is something that Jalen has. I think the thing that concerns me the most is, this was, I think, the last thing you mentioned is the screen game. They hit a couple screens on 3rd and long against LSU. We know that Alabama is probably going to bring more than 4 guys on a lot of these 3rd downs. So that's probably my biggest area of concern, is them getting some screen plays. But outside of hitting on a screen, I think that's not much of a concern in terms of Auburn doing things. The concern really is standard downs, I think. Standard downs are going to be an issue. The one thing that I would preface this conversation by is that this is the best defense that Auburn's faced. Right?
Yeah. The Clemson's defensive line is better, but they also like for one, Clemson held Auburn to 6 points. Alabama doesn't need to hold them to 6 points.
Right. And nor are they going to. No, I mean, they can't set the expectation there, right?
Right. But Alabama's linebackers, yeah, it's still probably. I don't think Clemson has a linebacker as good as Rashawn, for instance.
No.
And their secondary is definitely not anywhere near as good.
Right. So what is this? But this is the worst standard down matchup the Alabama defense faced this year, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So obviously, so the stage is set, so to speak. The standard downs are going to be probably one of the main areas in where this game is won or lost. So what do you guys think? What are we expecting Auburn to try to do on standard downs beyond just the obvious? I mean, they're going to feed the back, obviously.
Yeah.
They're going to feed the back a lot.
I think they're going to do a ton of motion.
Yeah.
And a ton, just try to make Dylan Moses in particular lose eye discipline.
That's what I'm most concerned about.
And that's sort of a standard feature of Gus's offense anyway, that he likes to do these things to trip linebackers up. But when you have a true freshman starting out there, no matter how talented he is, then that's really gonna be a focal point.
Do we think that this is one thing that I was mulling over against LSU and Auburn? Against LSU and Georgia, they used a lot of wildcat. They used a lot of wildcat against LSU, and they used a good amount of wildcat against Georgia. That it's not something that traditionally works against Alabama. I don't know if any team has even tried it for like an extended period of time against a Saban Alabama team. I'm struggling to think of an example of that. Has anybody really tried it a lot?
No, and I mean I don't see why you would, right? Like unless you're gonna really work off the jet motion and do some handoffs on that.
But they don't really do that, right? Now they could go into this game and say let's put in a whole bunch of tendency breakers and everything. But for the most part, they did one crazy play against LSU where they handed the ball off a couple times and they tried to throw it to Stidham. Well, you know what? If you want to throw the ball to Stidham or if you're wildcat stuff, like, okay, go. I say go for it because I'll take my chances. But they don't do much of that. Generally speaking, the Wildcat offense that they run is generally just designed to carry on as many blockers as possible and his time to pick through holes and get yardage and stuff like that. So I can't remember a team ever having success with the Wildcat against Alabama. And like Carter said, why would you? Because the one thing that Alabama always does extremely well is stop the run. And they're going to do an even better job of stopping the run if you take away the threat of the pass.
Yeah.
So, but then again, though, this is something that Auburn's done a lot this year in their biggest games, and it's something that they've had success with, particularly against LSU. So maybe they still do it against Alabama, or at least they dip their toe in the water and see how it goes early in the game.
Yeah, I think there's maybe they say we think we can. This is not the stoutest Alabama defense of recent years, and maybe we can just line up and beat them. And so it wouldn't surprise me if they do it a little and see if it works, and if it works, then they keep going back to it. Just real quick, are y'all getting a lot of? I'm okay.
Are we good? Oh, I'm
getting echo when I talk.
Oh. I was hearing that earlier. I'm not hearing it now. We can fiddle around with it for a minute.
Yeah. Trying to hear. Hold on. Okay, it's still happening when Mitchell has his mic muted. Ben, try muting your mic in the. Hello. Yeah. Okay. It's something that's coming back through
Ben. Yeah.
Which is weird because he's got headphones in.
Yeah.
Should I maybe take mine out and try it again?
Yeah. See what happens.
Okay, they're back on.
Okay. Hello.
Yeah.
There we go.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But I think if Auburn wants to try the Wildcat, they probably want to use it. Probably want to try it and test the waters when they're ahead of the chains already. I don't know that it's something you want to come out.
So you're thinking not a 1st and 10 play?
Because that just makes it so much more likely that you end up in a 3rd and 7 type. That gives you one play to get out of.
So you're thinking like thinking 2nd and 4.
Yeah, something like that.
Or in like short yardage situations.
Yeah.
Carry-on is such a good back for the Wildcat, right? Because he's
perfect.
He's like the perfect back, for the Wildcat. So it makes sense that they're using it this year, and I would expect to see some of it, but maybe not quite at the volume that we've seen. The key. So the biggest key right against Auburn is just to stop the run, just generally.
Yep.
Everything starts there. So what do you guys think are the things that Alabama needs to do well in this game, particularly in order to do that? Like, what are our biggest keys? Like, what are the things that maybe we're most concerned about, or that we think are most important? Like, what do they need to come out and do to stop the run? Who needs to play particularly well?
Rashawn and Dylan Moses.
Yeah.
For one. The defensive line needs to at least keep a stalemate with the Auburn offensive line. They can't get blown off the ball. I do think they should, like, okay, like Stidham is gonna take some shots down the field, and maybe you're gonna give some up, but like, I like Alabama's defensive backs against Auburn's receivers. So be aggressive against the run. Like, play bump and run and expect your corners to make some plays,
So, okay, so that's, yes. Okay, so maybe let's do that then instead first. What are the schematics? Because that seems to be kind of what you're getting at.
Yeah, I say single high, play bump and run blitz.
So now when you say run blitz, though, because one thing I noticed a lot, they didn't really face a team that blitzed a lot off the slot. Alabama, A, loves to blitz off the slot, and B, has one of the best players in the country.
Fitzpatrick coming off the slot. Yeah.
I feel like that's something that we're going to see a lot, right? To try to control the backside, to try to chase the play. I also feel like it could be particularly successful because Carry-on is so patient, and maybe that could work against him with Minkah kind of coming in and diving in the backfield and making plays. If he hesitates just a second too long, I hesitate. I use that as like a negative word, but I don't even mean it in a negative sense. I just mean like he's patient, right? But maybe too patient, and Minkah can kind of run him down. So I think that that's definitely something that we're going to see. The potential pitfalls there, right, are A, like Carter said, you're opening yourself up to deep shots, right? But Alabama opens themselves up to deep shots. It's just how they play defense.
I mean,
right?
That's like a hallmark of Nick Saban defensive philosophy right there.
To force the other team into low percentage plays, and deep shots are inherently low percentage plays.
Yep.
This is not a 2015 Alabama where they can just keep two deep safeties, play a lot of cover high, trust the safeties to fill against the run, but really take away everything because your front is so good. This is not that situation. Alabama doesn't have a good enough front for that. They don't have good enough linebackers for that. And this Auburn team is too good running the ball in order to do that. So Alabama has to load up the box in some way, whether that's bring an extra safety down or probably keep Minkah as more of a primary run defender. So I guess that's the biggest schematic thing that I think we're going to see. Anything else? Any other schematic points to kind of touch on here? You kind of know how we're going to line up, right? You're going to get Rashawn is going to be playing Mike, Dylan Moses is going to be playing Will. It's going to be mostly Jennings is going to be in, and then you're going to rotate at 3 defensive line spots. It's a good group. Minka has to be 100% for this game, so hopefully he is. This is like his game, right? That was one of the things I was thinking about before. This guy, like, this is his last regular season game in his Alabama career. This is the game, like maybe the most important game for him to date in terms of they do things that stress his position so much, and that if he has a really good game, that's going to be like a huge boost for Alabama in terms of whether or not they can win the game.
Right. This is the sort of thing where if he's the type of player he is capable of being in this game, then it's one where he can really control the game.
Right.
As much as a defensive back can control a game, this is the opportunity to make that happen. And Minka is one of the very few college defensive backs in the country that is capable of doing that, so long as he's 100% healthy.
Right. So let me throw another question at you guys. What is our level of concern here about the linebackers in this game? Both Gus and Kerryon, in terms of the scheme and in terms of Kerryon's ability, they stress the linebacker position so much, right? Like, if your linebackers are too aggressive, Kerryon's going to hit you with a cutback. If the linebackers aren't aggressive enough, they're going to outflank you, and Kerryon's going to get a big play kind of off the edge. So, like, are they ready for this? Like, is Dylan Moses and Rashawn ready for this in terms of keeping their run fits and staying disciplined, but also like making plays, getting off blocks, not getting outflanked? Like, what is our level of concern?
So I'd say if your level of concern was like 80-85% after Mississippi State, it might be 55% now.
Yeah.
Like, you're still worried because losing this is a game where Sean Deion Hamilton would have been really valuable.
Yes. Yeah.
And so losing a player like him hurts a lot, especially when you have also lost, say, Mac Wilson, and you're down to Rashawn and a true an insanely talented, insanely fast, but a true freshman nonetheless. And you don't want to read too much into Mercer, but at the same time, you saw that and you say, this kid can play. Like, you expect him to make some mistakes because he's a freshman and this is a tough defense on linebackers, but like, he can play. So I think you come back off the ledge a solid amount, but you still have to be worried, I think.
Mitch, how concerned are you?
Yeah, less than I was when we weren't sure who was going to be the linebacker. But yeah, I just wanted to just play fast and trust that the other guys, should he try and make a cutback, will be there. I'm not that concerned, I guess.
I guess it's just both a little bit annoying and a little bit frustrating that, like, they're in this situation against a team that is so challenging on the linebackers. One of the biggest things I noticed in the LSU game was that, the sort of the first half and second half were night and day for the Auburn offense, right? They, with the exception of red zone stalls, they did whatever they wanted in the first half, and then they didn't do anything in the second half. And I kind of noticed that went hand in hand with the linebacker play. Like, the linebackers were kind of over pursuing. They were getting out of their run fills a little bit in the first half. And then in the second half, they were a whole lot better, and there was a whole lot less running room for Kerryon. So, like, the linebackers are so crucial here in terms of stopping this. The two other keys that I wanted to bring up, because of how long Kerryon takes sometimes to get into his lane, and because of how much he challenges every different part of the field, safeties filling against the run is so important here. So Hootie Jones, Ronnie Harrison, like, they need to fill quickly, and they need to do it with discipline so they don't, get washed out of the play, and, they need to put themselves in position to make tackles. So that's a big key. The other big key is Daron Payne, because Auburn has had so much success moving defensive tackles and nose tackles off the ball in other games here, and that's been a big help for them in terms of running the ball. Well, that can happen, right? That cannot happen. The good news is that Deron Payne and Minka are their two best defensive players, right?
Yeah.
And these guys are playing such critical roles in this game. So it's maybe it's like kind of an oversimplification, but one of the things that they need to happen is their two best players need to play great. If Minka and Deron both have great games, I think Alabama is going to be a lot more successful against the run than people are anticipating.
Yep. Yeah, it's having, much has been, many hands have been wrung at the state of the Alabama defensive front, but this is an area where having a guy like Deron in the middle is just so critical, and they're so lucky with everything else that's gone on for this defense that they have a guy as powerful and disruptive as he is in the middle.
That's one of the first things that I'm going to watch on Saturday in terms of like how good I feel about Alabama's ability to stop the run is he getting moved off the ball? Because if he's getting moved off the ball, it is going to be a long day. But if he's holding his own at the point of attack and sort of shrinking the gaps a little bit there, it changes the entire game. And this is kind of obvious stuff, but just like this is a situation where your best player needs to play well. And I think that he's going to play well. So, the interior of the Auburn offensive line is really good. I forget which guard. They have one of their guards is really, really good, right? I'm forgetting whether it's the right guard or the left guard, but I think one of them is like a very highly touted NFL prospects, maybe. So it's a challenge for sure. But I think that they're going to play well.
I think it's the right guard, Braden Smith.
Yeah. Yes, Braden Smith. That's exactly right. Yeah. Well, is there more we want to say about this side of the ball, or should we get to
I would say standard down passing can be an issue for them too.
Yes. Okay.
They're great. They're one of the worst sack rates in standard downs in college football.
Auburn has one of the worst sack rates on standard downs.
Yep.
So what does that tell you then? Does that mean you want to try to work Christian Miller in on more standard downs in order to create some pressure situations on times where they pass, where you're not necessarily anticipating a pass, but you get a good pass rusher on the field and maybe makes a play?
I mean, maybe if we're thinking we may not even need them. I mean, if we're thinking that we're just going to win, passing down.
That's a good point too. If he's on a pitch count and you think you're going to win, right? I think that's a very good. I think that's a very
not a bad idea.
Interesting theory. Like if you only have a certain amount of snaps for him, yeah, I guess. But then that comes down to how well can he hold up against the run.
Sure. Yeah.
I wonder if they could play him and Jennings together. Probably not, right? They probably can't.
Probably not on standard downs,
of them. Yeah.
And see, this is where an area where I sort of wish that if they were going to get one of them back, they would get Lewis back.
Well, Lewis is the better player, also, right? I mean, but yes, he's a more versatile player in terms of his ability to play standard and passing downs. Yeah. But that's fine. Miller will help in some way. It just might not be. I guess the concern I have about passing on standard downs is just like, Alabama's going to be so aggressive, especially with bringing Minka off the edge, and I just worry about them hitting one of these like tunnel screens or something, and 50 yards later, I feel like that has the potential to happen, and I worry about that. But I guess you can't take away everything, right? You have to play aggressive against the run, and you just have to trust. Like Carter, you mentioned concern about tackling on the edges. Maybe it's something that they're going to have to do really well, because there's going to be times where they get caught, right, on one of these blitzes, and it's a swing screen to carry on, or it's a tunnel screen right into the vacated area, and like that play is going to go for 10 or 15 yards.
Yeah.
But it has to only go for 10 or 15 yards because somebody needs to defeat a block. Somebody needs to make a tackle. There's such a difference there between 15 yards and then one missed tackle, and it's 50 yards. So I think that's a really, really, really big key. You're not going to stop that play entirely, but you just have to stop it from being a home run play.
Yeah. Okay, so other side of the ball?
Other side of the ball.
Well, it's a similar sort of story, right? Like I was saying, so not to the same degree, because Alabama is, for a lot of reasons we talked about, Alabama is a little better on passing downs than Auburn is. But they really, really need to stay ahead of schedule against a defense that is very, very good at forcing you off schedule.
Yeah. So if we start again, like if we kind of take it the same pathway in terms of passing downs first, our goal for passing downs is that Alabama doesn't turn the ball over and makes a few plays.
Yeah. Just by their very nature, you're not going to convert a lot on, I say third and long, but passing downs generally. Like it's just a tough spot for an offense to be in.
Right.
But you've got to get something. Like
they're going to need it. Sorry, go ahead.
You can't go over on third downs.
They're going to need to give Matt Womack help against Jeff Holland. Holland is healthy, right? I know he had like a little ankle situation, but I think he's good.
He came back in the game.
He came back in the game. Okay, so then that answers that. They're going to need to give him help. Jeff Holland is maybe the best pass rusher in the SEC, pure pass rusher.
I think he has the most sacks.
Yeah, he's really good. And they're gonna need to give him help. Georgia, he kind of wrecked the game a little bit early against Georgia, but then Georgia did a little bit of a better job giving their right tackle. I think their right tackle was a true freshman, so he was kind of in over his head a little bit. So they had a little bit more success when they started to work some help in later in the game. There's no reason to even give Jeff Holland the chance to wreak havoc early in this game. Let's just give help from the beginning. Irv Smith is kind of really good at that stuff. Yep. Even just to use him to chip and then kind of be your check down out of that, like to open up as a check down. It's just little things to give help. I trust that the staff is going to be on top of that and to do that. But yeah, the biggest thing is just no turnovers, right? If somebody's going to turn the ball over on passing downs, make it be them.
Yeah.
So, but this isn't a situation like last year where Alabama, we just want them to be passive on passing downs. They have to go for it on passing downs. So that opens you up. That opens you up to a little bit of risk, but you're willing to take that risk in order to hopefully make some plays. But just generally, if Alabama's in a whole bunch of passing downs, this is going to be a long day.
Yeah.
So how do they have success on standard downs?
I think the best answer here is probably variety.
Yeah.
Just do one of the strengths about this Alabama offense, particularly now that they have Josh Jacobs back fully healthy and that he's really making an impact and they're game planning to have him make an impact. This offense is really versatile in the kind of things they can do on standard downs. They trust Jalen enough that he can drop back and pass some. They have 3 different backs they like. They can, work screens to Jacobs. They can work the option game. They can work outside runs with Bo, inside runs with Damian. So they can do a lot of different things. And then, and they can run gap runs. They can run zone runs. They can run option. They can do a whole lot of different things. I think the main key here is you're facing an Auburn defensive front, and particularly a defensive line that is so good and so disruptive and so good at getting teams behind schedule. I think you just have to keep them guessing. Make them play indecisive. Make them play slow.
Yeah. So now we texted a little bit about this before the show. Somebody mentioned it to us on Twitter. Let's talk about position, like personnel. Right. So, Carter, because this sort of dovetails with what you were talking about, right? In terms of keeping them guessing, showing a whole bunch of different things about them, being multiple, diverse, whatever word you want to use. So what is the ideal personnel for this game? I know I had mentioned the idea of having a lot of 2-back sets here. Do you think there's any chance that that's something that we see? They had so much success with that against Mississippi State.
We've certainly been seeing it more and more, and that doesn't limit you as much because you can use Jacobs in so many ways. You can split him out. You can run jet sweeps with him.
Yeah.
You can do. He was the fullback on Najee Harris's touchdown run. So you can do a whole bunch of different things with him. I still think you probably 11 is probably going to be your base personnel, right? Just
well,
because
yeah.
as kind of a, that's, you can do a lot of different things from 11. Like you've still got enough guys that you can run block well, but you have enough receivers that you can send guys out into a pattern and not depend on one guy getting free. But yeah, I think you definitely want to see Jacobs out a lot there, and I think they've been effective with him in two-back sets, so I think that needs to be a very common thing.
Yeah, let's say so, but let's talk about 11 for a second though, because this is something we touched on in the last show. 3 receivers, Calvin is one of them. Do we want to see 2 other guys get the lion's share of the snaps, or do we want them to mix it up? Like, how do we want them to divvy up those? Is there a particular matchup here where we want the upperclassmen wide receivers on the field next to Calvin, or is this a particular matchup where we want the freshmen on the field, or is it just sort of a mix and match by possession thing?
I think it depends on your game plan, right? Like if you want to come out and kind of throw the ball around, you probably want the young guys out there.
Okay.
And
I guess it probably depends on how well you think you can pass block, right? Because I think if you give Jalen time to throw, then in terms of pure receiving talent, the freshmen are preferable. But there's also, and this goes back to sort of being creative on stand-up downs, I think Cam Sims and Robert Foster let you do some things that are kind of let you put stress on the Auburn defense in different ways. Like, they did this, I guess, against Mercer. They got the ball to Robert Foster on a jet sweep, which I love because he's so fast. And this way you don't have to worry about him dropping the ball, assuming he doesn't drop the ball on the sweep. That's a guy who can get to the edge so well. And, if he's running to one side and you're depending on one receiver to make a block, well, Cam Sims is your best blocking receiver. You can also, I think just having more dependable blockers out there also helps you. Like, if you want to get plays away from the middle of the Auburn defense, because that's really the strength. You want to, they're deep. The defensive backs are kind of the weakness. I don't think they tackle all that well. So I think you're going to want to see some stuff where you're running these zone stretch plays with
perimeter
Bo.
runs.
Yeah, just perimeter runs in general, but like zone stretch plays with Bo. You're running sweeps with whether it's a receiver or whether it's Josh Jacobs. I think they can really hurt Auburn doing that, and you really want good blockers out there on the edge when you do that.
So I want to touch on both things. So Mitch mentioned the point, how much do you want to throw? And Carter, you mentioned the point about kind of how you have success running the ball. So let's kind of set the stage here. Auburn is going to be really aggressive against the run, right? Like they are going to stack the box. They are almost always going to play with a stack box. So they almost always played with a stack box against Georgia. Now Georgia is less. Alabama is a lot bigger threat through the air than Georgia is, but Alabama is also more multiple running the football than Georgia is. So they really, you kind of have to stack the box against Alabama, don't you?
Yep.
It's like if you don't stack the box against Alabama, they're a good running team. They're going to run the quarterback, and then they're going to be +1 with a blocker. They're going to just run you to death if you don't stack the box. So you have to stack the box against Alabama. You have to play aggressively against the run. Let's start with the passing. How much do you want to see them throw on standard downs? And if they do throw on standard downs, how do you want to see them throw on standard downs? And I guess what I mean by that is, how many shots do you want to see? Because I want to see shots.
I want to see shots.
I'm just going to throw that out there. I want to see shots. Man, Georgia had so many opportunities to hit plays down the field. They had the flea flicker where the guy was wide open, but they missed the blitz pickup. They had Riley Ridley for a walk-in 70-yard touchdown, and he just dropped the ball. They had other opportunities where they didn't, maybe.
And Riley's big brother is a whole hell of a lot better than
Riley's big brother. We like Riley, but Riley's big brother is better, and he's probably going to catch the ball and then keep running and run it in. So, Auburn. Now, the advanced stats say that Auburn is good at preventing big plays. Is that correct? I think I saw that.
Let's see. Defensive, so PPP, 4th in the country. Yeah.
Okay, but who have they really played that can stress the deep part of the field?
No one.
I mean, Clemson has Deion Kane. But that was like Kelly Bryant's second career. That was his second career start.
Yeah.
You know? And Alabama, both in terms of Calvin and in terms of the numbers that they force you commit to the run game. I really don't think that they've seen a team like this that can test the back end of the field on standard downs as well as Alabama can. So,
and regardless of what you have given up, when you play as aggressively against the run as Auburn is going to in this game, you open yourself up to big plays. You just do.
Yeah. I want to see. I mean, do you guys agree with that? Like, I want to see like lots of shots.
I was just reading. There was a new Smart Football piece that went up in the past week where he was talking about the Mills concept, which is basically you. It started out as like a. It's like a West Coast playbook staple. So like John Gruden loves the base play that it's derived from. So, but you have the tight end lined up in line at the Y, run either a little like a hook route or like a square in. It's a high-low vertical pass basically.
Right.
You run have a little hook or a square in. Which in the old West Coast version was the primary read, but then you run a post on top of that. Yeah. And originally that was just sort of an alert, like, you know, if it happens to be wide open, then you throw it. But then basically Steve Spurrier turned it into we're looking for big shots all the time. So it's like the ball is designed to go to the post there. And the idea is that the square in action draws a safety up, and then the receiver running the post can get behind them. And, you know, that's the sort of thing where as aggressively as Auburn is going to play against the run, and as much as their safeties are going to be are going to be looking to float
in the backfield.
So, I'm obviously that's not, I'm not saying let's run that particular play just because I was reading about it and then it's cool, but like passing concepts like that will be open for Alabama in this game. And when you have guys as good as Calvin, or even just, as explosive as the other guys, as fast as Robert Foster is, as good and talented as the freshmen are, like you can really use any number of guys to run concepts like that and try to get behind the defense.
Yeah. So I totally agree. I was thinking the one comparison I had earlier. Remember, like the Michigan State Cotton Bowl game, how like that passing the passing approach in that game was so much predicated on taking shots because of how aggressive we expect them to play the run. Could this be a similar situation or more reserved? I mean, like how many shots? It's hard to put like a number on it. But I'm just thinking, because obviously it's a risk, right? You get behind the chains, and then this defense is gonna suffocate you. But I guess I don't know. It's so hard to put a number on. It's got to be done by feel. The coaches in the booth see stuff with the safeties, like how aggressively are they coming down? What's open behind them? But I guess just the way to just maybe say this is just generally we want to see shots.
Yeah.
When appropriate.
Yeah. Be appropriately aggressive. Yeah.
So now the second question is, and Carter, this is what you were talking about, when you run the ball, we're looking to we're talking more about perimeter runs, right? Is that what the way we think they're going to be most successful in this game?
I think this is a game Lane Kiffin would have loved game planning for.
Yeah. Perimeter runs and run the quarterback.
Yep.
I think they have to run Jalen a lot in this game. First of all, because obviously it's really effective to run your quarterback, but also because that's going to be their way to counteract the box numbers, I think, to get extra blockers in there.
Yeah, you got to even out the numbers.
Midline reads, I think, when they're going to try to keep it a little bit more to the interior, maybe. I'd like to see some more midline reads. It's going to be. What kind of success are we expecting Alabama to have on the ground on standard downs? I guess that's kind of the thing. Just to sort of go back to the Michigan State game comparison, we didn't expect Alabama to have success on standard downs against Michigan State running the ball, despite the fact that they were going to have a Heisman running back. So so is this like that? It's not, right? we expect Alabama to have some success, maybe.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be tough. Auburn's rushing defense is real. They're actually the #1 rushing defense in S&P Plus. So they're really, really good.
Yeah.
At the same time, I don't think they've faced a rushing offense with as many that can do as many different things and has as many good backs in a quarter. Like there's no, I mean, you've basically got 4 great runners for Alabama in Jalen and the 3 backs, and they can do things in so many different ways. So, especially I think if they commit to the perimeter runs, and all the various things they can do to stretch Auburn horizontally, then I think that opens things up some in the middle. So, I don't know. Against a front as good as Auburn's, I think there's the possibility of a game where they really shut you down. At the same time, I feel fairly optimistic about Alabama's chances to do some things.
Yeah. Mitch, what about you? Or what are your expectations?
Yeah, I don't know how often I expect them to be successful, but I think when they are successful, I mean, it could be pretty big because if we were talking about how Alabama is probably the best downfield passing team maybe that Auburn's played. Would we say that Alabama is also maybe the most explosive running team?
What do the stats say about that? What is their?
I mean, who else would we put in like the same category with Alabama?
Let's see.
Like LSU maybe?
Does LSU hit?
Like just going off the bare number, Alabama rushing ISO PPP 20th in the country, or the bare ranking ISO.
Yeah. So they're good. So they hit big plays in the running game.
So to contrast, like LSU's explosiveness is like 76th.
Okay.
I don't even know.
What's Georgia's? Does Georgia hit big plays in the run game?
Let's see.
Yeah, 6th.
Okay.
Interesting.
But at the same time, like we talked about, Georgia they have a lot of good backs, but they don't have that variety. Right. They're not gonna Georgia doesn't have an option game or anything like that.
And I think we like Alabama's offensive line a lot more than we like Georgia's too.
Yeah. I guess that's, this, we can talk about like schematics or whatever, or the running backs or everything like that. But I mean, a lot of this again is going to come down to whether the offensive line is going to be able to hold up here against this front.
Clemson's running game is very not explosive.
Yeah. So I'm kind of thinking maybe, hopefully they can average 2 or 3 yards maybe with some fairly big plays mixed in there.
Is that enough though to win the game? Like 3 yards.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you've got, I'm talking big plays. I'm thinking like, they open up and.
Right. So you mean okay. So I took average too literally. You mean 3 yards here, 3 yards there, but then you hit a big one and okay,
right.
Yeah.
I
mean, that would be sufficient, I think.
So, yeah.
Combined with the success that we expect them to have in the passing game, I don't know.
As long as I'll feel good as long as they're not just give me don't give negative plays and don't give a lot of stuff. Give me positive yards.
How does Auburn do with stuff? That there's an advanced stat for that, right?
Yes. Rushing stuff rate defense 57th.
Okay. So and Alabama. And how's Alabama offensively?
Rushing offense stuff rate 5th.
Yeah.
Okay. So if anybody wants to feel good about something that involves the Alabama running game, that's something to particularly feel good about. They should at least hopefully be in a lot of 2nd and 7s and not a lot of 2nd and 11s.
Yep.
So that's a big difference if they're not if they're not getting stuffed is 0 or negative yards. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
At or behind the line.
At or behind the line. Yeah. That's a much better way to say what I was trying to say. So So okay, so that's a really good goal then, right? Is at least to like start your running game with do not get stuffed. At least make sure you get 3 yards, because Auburn is also not right. Auburn also does not have many stuffs in their running game. Like they're so good at least getting 2 or 3 yards.
Yeah, offensive stuff rate 9th in the country, 14.5%.
Yeah, and you can just see that, right? Like because they're so multiple, and there's so many different things for all the players for the defensive players to consider, that it's tough to be aggressive enough to make plays at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage, because there's so many things going on around you, and particularly when you couple that sort of scheme with a good offensive line. So I guess we're not even expecting Alabama to make to get to stuff. It's just like, this game might come down to who does the most with their 2nd and 7s. Like you're going to get into your 2nd and 7s, you're going to get into your 2nd and 8s. Which team is going to do the most with those? Which team is going to give themselves first downs on those plays, or 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 3s, and which team is going to give themselves 3rd and 6s and 3rd and 7s? Because the team that's giving themselves 3rd and 6s and 3rd and 7s is not going to win the game.
Right.
Is there anything more in specific we want to say about the offense, Alabama offense against their defense?
I think we about covered it.
Yeah. The last thing that I wanted to talk about, and Carter, we were talking about this before the podcast, one of the areas in which Alabama has been great this year and Auburn has been not so great this year is field position. Right? So Alabama on offense typically starts with great field position. On defense, the other team typically starts with bad field position. Auburn is the opposite. On offense, they typically start with bad field position. On defense, the other team typically starts with good field position. So that's a strength of Alabama's dovetailing with a weakness of Auburn's. That seems like it could be. And the hidden yardage game and the field position game obviously can be very decisive. We saw that with Florida State earlier this year. But the question that I posed to Carter, and this is something that I've been sort of mulling over recently and without really an answer, and maybe people smarter than me have an answer, but I don't have one, is how predictive that is. Like the fact that this has been such a strength for Alabama and the fact that this has been such a weakness for Auburn, does that mean that it's going to play out like that on Saturday? I mean, it doesn't definitively mean that it's going to play out on Saturday, but are the odds that it's going to play out like that on Saturday, or is it not really predictive? And I don't, maybe do you guys have any insight on that or any thoughts on this? Because like if Alabama controls field position, they're probably going to win, and I would hope that they would, but I don't know.
So we were talking about this before the show, and I was sort of working through it as we were. And I guess what I would say to start off is that it's probably more replicable than it might at first seem like it would be. So there's some factors where it's sort of self-evidently true that it would be, like punting, for instance. Like Alabama has a really good punter, and they've only allowed like 3 returns on the whole year for very little yards. So being good at punting and being good at coverage, and same thing with kickoffs, that's generally going to be predictive, be replicable. And then, I don't know, we talk about turnovers being luck, and they are. But also there's a certain element of like, Alabama they take good care of the football. They have the 7th fewest. They're tied for the fewest turnovers in the country with LSU. Their starting quarterback has only thrown 1 interception. They haven't put the ball on the ground. It just, obviously there's some luck with the way the ball bounces on fumbles, but it doesn't feel to me like, aside from punts, that Alabama has really put the ball on the ground that much this year.
No, definitely not. I don't think. I don't think that their backs have fumbled much. Robert Foster had the 1 fumble that was recovered by the defense, but I don't think the backs have put the ball on the ground much.
Jalen has fumbled twice and lost. Okay, God, I am going to knock some fucking wood on this because Damian has not fumbled, Bo has not fumbled, Najee has not fumbled, Josh Jacobs has not fumbled.
Wow. I was going to say I didn't remember many fumbles from the backs, but that's
Jalen has fumbled twice and they've lost neither of them. Yeah, I'm just gonna knock on this end table for like 3 or 4 minutes here. Just gonna do that for a little bit because
very necessary.
That's way better than I would have thought. Holy crap! So yeah, it seems like a lot of the fumbles have come. I mean, I know Ruggs they had 2 fumbles, both basically after in garbage time against Mercer. I think Ruggs was one, and who was the other?
I remember the Ruggs fumble. I know that there was another fumble. I just can't picture it.
Yeah, and then Robert Foster had a fumble against Texas A&M.
Yeah.
And so I know they have 7 turnovers on the year. One of them was an interception by Jalen. One's an interception by Tua. 2 were fumbles against Mercer. And
one is the Robert Foster fumble.
One is the Robert Foster, so that's, yeah. And then Ronnie Clark had a fumble that they lost. I don't remember what game that was. And there must be one other one. Probably they've lost one on a muff punt.
A punt? Right? Was there? Yeah, there was one on a muff punt. Yeah.
Okay, so that's 7 turnovers, of which the Ronnie Clark fumble, the Tua interception, and the 2 fumbles against Mercer were in garbage time. They've had 3 turnovers this year when the game was actually in doubt.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a big element of luck in making the number that low.
But generally they're good at avoiding turnovers.
Right, yeah. The whole point of that is you don't get the number that low without also just being good at taking care of the ball. So that's another that was a very long-winded way of saying that they take good care of the ball, and that element seems to be replicable as far as field position.
Right. So good punt team. So the things that allow Alabama to control field position, just worrying about their own situation, is they punt the ball well and they cover the punts well. They don't turn the ball over, and they get stops on defense quickly without allowing first downs. Is that something probably that contributes to good field position for the offense, right? Because the first 2 things are just good field position for the defense. And then maybe that's where it starts. So the defense, those things create good field position for the defense. The defense gets off the field, which in turn creates good field position for the offense.
Yep.
So that's kind of clear cut. Why is Auburn so bad with field position?
So their special teams outside of, their best aspect of their special teams is field goal kicking, which really has almost nothing to do with field position, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like if they just make every field goal, then they're just going to go kick it off.
Yeah, it's just kickoffs, which is not.
Yeah,
so their special teams is bad, right? They don't cover punts well.
Really
do they cover? Do they not cover kickoffs well?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a potential opportunity for Alabama.
If their coverage units aren't good, that makes a lot of sense in terms of why the field position would be bad. How is there? I've watched a little bit, a decent amount of Auburn this season, but I do not recall anything about their punter.
Well, man, I don't know. He had that. I feel like he wasn't impressive against Georgia.
Punter. They've used 2.
So that's a good sign.
Yeah.
That's an immediate good sign.
Aiden Marshall, the freshman, who, by the way, is all of 5'11", 163 pounds.
Oof.
He has 27 punts. They both the other one's is a sophomore who the freshman has 27 punts, the sophomore has 14. Both average under 40 yards a punt.
Yeah. So they're not okay. So they're not great in terms of their kicking games outside of field goal kicking. They
only have the freshman that's punted 27 times, 11 fair catches, 2 touchbacks. So more than half of his kicks have been returned.
Right. Who's going to be back there for Alabama on Saturday?
I would assume Xavier Marks, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of too bad, because you just don't feel like he's a guy that's going to make a play. You just feel like he's the guy who's most likely to not fumble it.
Does any part of us want Minka back there? Can't just do it in this game, I guess. You would have to have done it before.
Yeah. If he's healthy and if they feel confident, I don't know. Maybe if they just feel like they need a game breaker. But this is something where.
Would you go to Minka over like Diggs?
Oh yeah, Diggs has had issues, right?
Well, yeah, but at least he's like fielded punts in a game before too.
That's true.
Yeah.
Calvin's out. He's awful at it.
I feel like if we were gonna see,
he has to be bad at something, right?
That's true.
if we were gonna see Minka do it at all, that he would have done it. Well, because he didn't play much for Mercer. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly would rather they focus on getting his maximum contributions to the defense.
Yeah, I agree. And also, they're so scared off from what happened to Eddie last year, obviously, which I get. I understand that you don't want a repeat situation of that. So, yeah, I don't know. It's just like it feels like this is an area where they can take advantage, and I don't think Xavier Marks is going to take advantage of it. But even if you just have a situation where the guy hits a punt, it's returnable, Xavier gets 10 yards and runs out of bounds, it's like that's a win.
That's good,
right?
Yeah,
that's a win.
That's 10 yards you don't have to get against Auburn's defense.
Right. So I guess I think that like I'm not making a prediction one way or the other about how the field position is going to go, but I guess what I'm saying is that like one team is good at this, the other team has not been good at this. We can see factors that would allow these two things to continue to happen. So it's something to watch for, I guess. Like it's something to just be looking for to see if Alabama's controlling field position. But I guess I can't really predict that to happen, or I don't feel comfortable predicting it to happen. But it could.
Yeah.
So basically, I don't really have anything meaningful to say about it. I don't not taking a stance here.
Yeah, there's not so much beyond what we were just talking about with punt return selection. There's not a whole lot of strategy in terms of that element.
Yeah. Outside of one of these crazy plays or something where you block in the wrong direction, right? This is becoming a little bit popular.
Did y'all see the USC punt return against UCLA? That was awesome.
It's pretty cool. It's like it's so amazing when it works. It's like the prettiest thing when it works.
I think that's the first time I've ever seen that result in a touchdown.
Yeah. It's teams try it and it usually is not very successful.
Doesn't work out.
But it's pretty cool when it works. Do we have anything more to say about like the particulars of the game? Like strategy, like I don't know.
Not that I can think of.
I don't really have anything else.
I got a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So because we trust Papanauskas from inside 40, maybe like
40.
When Alabama reaches a certain part of the field, how early do you want that to feel like 4-down territory?
The issue with that though is that he's hurt, right?
Do we know anything about that? Like what the injury
Saban's
is?
description of the injury was that he had a little bit of a pull, and today he described him as day-to-day.
That's annoying. That's so annoying. Because he's been good. He's been really good.
Like, yeah, the doink against Mississippi State, but like,
that was hit. But like,
it's still a pretty good hit.
Yeah, even that kick was like hit well, and like it was longer than it should have been because they lost yardage, and like if it had been just like 1 yard closer.
I remember I read a little interview with him last week where he was just talking about, he was like, yeah, I hit it well. Like it wasn't anything wrong with it. It just sort of didn't go in. It was kind of, he kind of had a good like a golfer type mentality, I guess, that it was just like, oh, well, nothing to change. That one didn't work, which is exactly, kicking is 1,000% mental.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's the attitude you want to see your kicker have. So hopefully he's 100%.
I think that Mitch's point is a good one though, because it sort of speaks to maybe how Alabama tries to win this game, or put another way, how many points does it take to win this game, and does it take touchdowns, or are field goals acceptable? Because I would say that so I looked at the advanced stats. You guys know more about this than I do, but like they S&P Plus gives percentile performances for offense and defense for each game, right? And like Auburn's defense is good in every game. Their lowest performance is like a 65th percentile or something, and it's usually like a good bit better than that. But in their 2 losses, their offense was terrible. I think against Clemson, it was like 5th percentile. Against LSU, it was like 20th percentile.
Yep.
So the way, so like, we'll do predictions in a minute, but Alabama winning this game, is it like it's probably going to be a situation where the Auburn offense doesn't play well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Alabama could win this game if the Auburn offense doesn't play well, but the most likely path to victory is with a poor performance by the Auburn offense, I think.
Yeah.
And we know that the Auburn defense is going to play pretty well. It's not like Alabama's going to score 40 points, I don't think, in this game. So, like, the lower scoring you expect it to be, the more acceptable field goals become.
Right.
So if the kicker's healthy, I kind of want to take my points.
Yeah. I think I still would like to, like, I don't want to see JK out there, right?
Right.
If they're not going to run Papanastos out there for longer than about a 45-yarder, then if it's going to be a long field goal, I would rather just go for it, unless it's like a 4th and 10 or something like that. But yeah, I think once you get to a range where you're like, okay, Papanastos can hit it from here, then you probably take your points.
But there's one more point to make, though, because if we're talking about short yardage situations like 4th and 1, 4th and 2, and we just went through the fact that A, Alabama does not get stuffed a lot on offense, and B, the Auburn defense does not get a lot of stuffs.
Oh yeah, well that's as a general philosophical matter. If you're in plus territory and it's 4th and 1, I support going for it every single time.
Me too.
So that's not even a consider. If it's like an
4th
obvious,
and 5.
Yeah.
What about like 4th and 3 versus like a 45-yard field goal?
Go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah, that's how I feel too.
Go for it. Yeah. And what about like how aggressive do we want them to be early in the game? Because
a 45-yard field goal is like you're giving them the ball at like the 28-yard line, which is not ideal, but not, you're not giving them fantastic field. It's only 3 yards more than a touchback on a kickoff, so that doesn't bother me at all. Yeah, go for it.
But we also want them to be going for 4th downs, like around midfield, right? Like 4th and that kind of stuff too.
Like I said, short, like 4th and 3 or shorter in plus territory. Right. I'm going for it every time. And with
the quarterback's ability to run the football, that makes it even more. Now, Mitch and I have talked about this a lot. There was in a certain Iron Bowl, Alabama did go for a 4th and short when they could have taken points. They went for it. They didn't get it, and maybe that cost them the game. But I trust Alabama to get 4th and shorts. And that was a year where it was AJ as the quarterback, and they didn't have a running quarterback. I trust it even more this year.
Yep.
Right, when you have Jalen to really run it. And I think that's kind of what we want, right? On 3rd and shorts, we kind of want the quarterback run game mostly. Yeah. Is that what you guys want? Like, because I don't even want like an option play or none of that. I just want Jalen running the ball himself. Yeah. Shotgun snap, back out there as a lead blocker. Jalen get me the yards. Yeah. Almost like a Wildcat situation, except
yeah.
That's okay.
And that's just part of like I don't have any raw numbers in front of me, but my understanding is that coaches consistently underrate the value of going for it on 4th and short.
Yeah.
Like it's just like the statistics say that going for it on 4th and short is, especially in plus territory, is like almost always the right decision.
Yep. Okay. Well, I just want to say that I really want them to win this game.
I'm glad we got that out there.
Because, I want to, they never win these games when Auburn season is on the line.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm saying.
I want to ruin their season.
Although
a lot of that Saban's never beaten a 9-win Auburn team thing has been going around a lot lately, and the main takeaway I get from that is like, oh, so you're talking. You're telling me that this is only the fourth time in 11 years that Auburn's won at least 9 games? Oh, that's cute. Alabama's won 10 games in 10 straight seasons.
Right. So yeah. No, yeah. I'm not trying to make.
Do we just pause for a second and talk about for a second how fucking absurd that is?
Yeah.
10 plus games in 10 straight seasons. 11 plus games in 9 of those 10 seasons.
And in only one of those 10 seasons did they need the bowl game to get to 10 wins.
Yeah.
And that's the same season that if the playoff had only one season where if the playoff had been implemented, they would have missed the playoff. Right?
Yeah, or at least not have been in like serious contention.
Yeah, 2008 maybe. 2008 would have been
one loss to number 1 Florida.
Yeah. I just worry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Florida goes, Oklahoma goes, then you've got like Texas, USC.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we talked. Yeah,
it's tough. It's tough. What about 2013?
But they'd be in the mix.
Oh, yeah.
They'd be in the first 2 out if they aren't in.
I think 13 a definite though, really quick. Just 13 they go. Auburn goes.
Florida State goes.
Florida State goes. Michigan State is 12-1, Big Ten champ. They're gonna go, I think, definitely. Yeah. And they would have just beaten Ohio State, so they're going. The best team in.
I think I want to say didn't Alabama only drop to like 4th in the committee is not the polls, but like
right.
I think there's a good chance after Alabama's 12-0 and number 1 all season, and they lose on that play.
Right, because Stanford was Pac-12 champs and they had 2 losses, and Oklahoma was Big 12 champs and they had 2 losses.
Yeah.
It's
got to it's got to be Alabama.
It would have been Alabama, so Alabama would have gotten It would have.
They were 4th BCS.
Yeah.
That week or the week after. So,
but really, even just like you don't even have to put it necessarily in the playoff terms. Just think about that. 2010 was the only season going back through 2008 where they weren't as late as rivalry weekend. They
contending
weren't
for the national championship.
Contending for a national championship.
Yeah. And in every single season, they've went into the LSU game contending for the national championship.
Yep.
2010 being the one year where the LSU game ended their national championship pursuit. Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. Auburn, not as successful. But
Auburn has let's see, an 0-8 SEC season over that course of time. Alabama has 3-8-0 SEC seasons over that time. Yeah, just
But it would be cool to win this one.
Yes,
it would be cool to win one where their season is on the line. This game doesn't quite have the buzz that the 2013 game did, right? Because like 2013 game, Alabama was back-to-back national champs. Auburn was coming off that game 2 weeks prior against Georgia, where they won, with the Hail Mary. So it doesn't quite have the same buzz as that one, and maybe it doesn't even have the same buzz as 2010, right? Like 2010, Alabama wasn't playing still for a championship, but 2010 had Cam.
Yeah, I would still say this one's bigger than 2010 just because both teams are in contention for a national championship, and it's like just to put it in bare terms of rankings, that game was like number 2 versus number 9, and this one's 1 versus 6.
Yeah. There was, I guess, maybe the buzz in 2010 was different. It didn't have to necessarily do with where the teams were, but it had to do with a certain player.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like it's kind of like a different thing, but right. So this game is bigger in terms of the impact on the season. And actually, in that game ultimately didn't really mean anything for Auburn, right? As it turned out, because if they had lost that game, but then won the next, but they still would have went to the SEC championship. They would have beaten South Carolina, and then they still would have went to the national championship game. Yep. So technically, in terms of the national title picture, that game meant nothing. for either team. But obviously it meant a whole lot for different reasons. But yeah, I would really like them to win. And I'm very excited for this game. And I want this game for Jalen because...
So bad.
Yeah. And I want this game for Jalen, and I want this game for, you know... It's been an interesting year in terms of like the attrition with some injuries at some certain positions, and they're being doubted going into this game more than they were doubted like
more than they have in years and years.
Yeah, like there was never this kind of doubt going into the Iron Bowl before. This is backed up by the advanced stats, right? The advanced stats say Alabama's only a slight favorite in this game. I think S&P Plus says they're only like a 2.5-point favorite or something.
Yeah, it gives Alabama a 56% win probability and projects a scoring margin of basically 3 points. Right. I want to say FPI gives them like a 61-62% chance with a slightly larger margin. The Vegas spread is 4.5. Which it's the smallest Iron Bowl spread since 2010.
I think that right. So 2020, so right. So not 2013, despite the fact that was in Auburn. And I also think that in 2013, I think S&P Plus gave Alabama like a 75% chance to win. That sounds high, but that's kind of what I remember. You know, Auburn
like a 10-point spread or something.
Yeah.
Auburn had like a very weird year that year, right? Where their defense wasn't very good and they were getting lucky at times, and Alabama was incredibly dominant in 2013. So I think that S&P Plus had them as like significant favorites going into that game, even though my nerves did not reflect that. And it turned out that the result didn't reflect that either. But this game is different, right? I mean, this game feels like a coin flip. It kind of is a coin flip. Maybe that's a good segue into predictions.
Yeah. I think in terms of the spread is small enough that I just as an initial matter, I think when you say Alabama wins, you probably are also saying they cover. Maybe I'm just projecting that I don't want like a 3-point win because I just don't know if my heart could take the pressure. But I don't know. This game is basically a coin flip, like you were saying. So I'm just gonna be bullish here. I just think this team is motivated, and I think they've got some dog in them. I think they fight. They've really got a lot of dig deep and show them what you're made of. So I'm gonna say 24. Carlson's gonna make a field goal. At least. So let's say 24-16 Alabama.
That's crazy. I was going to say 24-17. So
yeah.
So I think that Auburn is going to put some drives together, but I think most of those drives are going to stall. I think the numbers back this up, that they're not great at finishing drives with touchdowns. You see that with their players, right? They don't have their quarterback is not a precise passer. They don't have big wide receivers to make plays in the red zone. They're not great at scoring touchdowns. They had issues against LSU with turning drives into touchdowns. They had issues even against Georgia.
First half against Georgia, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that they're going to.
Georgia doesn't keep helping them out, like who knows if that doesn't continue the whole game.
Right. So I think that I think that I'm going to go with 16 points as well for Auburn. I think that 3 field goals and 1 drive ending in a touchdown. I think that's a pretty reasonable amount of points for Auburn to score. Clearly, we're all right around there. And I will go with my prediction for the Alabama offense now kind of depends on whether I think Papanauskas is healthy enough. I will just say that he is. I will say that he's good to make field goals. I think that Alabama will have the same amount of scoring drives. I think they will turn 1 more of those scoring drives into touchdowns than Auburn. So I will go with 20-16 Alabama, with the game ending on a failed Auburn drive at the end of the game.
Oh,
maybe a Hail Mary, maybe a throw to the end zone, maybe some very nervous moments for us as we picture, while that ball's in the air, we picture years and years and years of Auburn crazy luck, especially on the plains.
What are they going to nickname this one?
That
is the surest sign you have of any that Auburn is such a little brother program. They can't beat Alabama without giving it a nickname. Because every win over Alabama is a momentous occasion to them.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I don't want that to happen this year. No nickname for this. How many Bama wins have a nickname? The kick, is that it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Rocky Block?
No, I just meant against Auburn.
Oh, yeah.
I meant against Auburn.
The kick is the only one that immediately comes to mind.
Wait, why am I getting confused about this? Run in the Mud was an Alabama win over Auburn, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was. I remember that was Kenny Stabler, right?
Yes, yeah. So Run in the Mud. Okay, so Alabama has Run in the Mud.
Yeah, 1967.
Yeah, so Alabama has Run in the Mud and the kick, and Auburn has. Well, I don't know. They've got kick six. They've got
like 15 of them.
They've got punt, Bama, punt. Yeah. So yeah. I don't. If this game ended without a nickname, that would be really good. Yeah. So yeah, this is going to be exciting. I'm very excited for this game.
Yeah, it's going to be huge.
So yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see y'all next week. The tone and content of the show will be drastically different next week, depending on which way this game goes. But we'll see y'all then, and hopefully we're preparing for an SEC championship. So roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.